Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. And got a couple of subjects to cover today, but as usual, I always encourage if you have questions, concerns, things going well, things stumbling blocks, let's talk about them. That's what this call is for. Any and everybody will actually benefit from your questions or comments. So this is a great time to bring that up. So Missy, if anybody will raise their hand if they have questions, let me know, and I'll get into the pointer here. Also, if I have a volunteer or two to be a sounding board as I go through our topic today is going to be how to get the most influential person out of a couple to get on your side and start selling for you. So we'll start that here in about 2 minutes after I go through the pointer. And so if we either have questions, comments, or somebody would volunteer to be my sounding board, that would be terrific. And let's see.
Yep,
yes.
I actually do have a typed-in question here from Rick. Rick asks, for the group, has anyone had any recent experiences with focus group forums, positive or negative? I'm planning on running some starting in May.
I would say, we could look for hands, but I would say probably not, because now is not the time to be running focus groups. Focus groups should be done during the downtimes during the summer and during November, December. But right now you should be not wasting your time on focus groups. You should be doing seminars, because that's the events. Because our events we had a 99 people at one person's last month. We had 47. Our average right now is 61 people across the country, as high as 99 and as low as what, Missy? 37?
I think 37 is our absolute lowest.
Okay, lowest. But our average is 61 right now, with many running. So hopefully nobody's doing forums. If we see this, so Missy, is anybody raising their hands? Probably they won't after I've said that.
Nope, I'm not getting any hand raisers, and I'm not getting any volunteers either, guys. We need some volunteers to make this call more fun for everyone.
And the reason you don't want to be doing focus groups right now is, think about this, guys. So let me get my little drawing pad out here so we can talk about this. So it's a good question, Mickey, or Rick, but we don't want to be doing those right now, because here's the thing. Oops, if I can get my pad going here. If I can find down here. Hey, stop doing that. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, think about this. So right now our average event is 61 people. And from that 61 people, we've gotten guys that have gotten over 50%. In fact, we had one guy get 70% appointments at these. So let's just say somewhere below. Let's say that you even get out of those you have 40 buying units, because you're going to have some couples and some singles in there. And even if you get half, that's 20 appointments. Okay, so you had one meeting where you got 61 people, 40 units, and 20 appointments. The problem with forums is this: the only way you can do focus groups or forums is a focus group has to be a true focus group. So if it's a true focus group, let's see some answers here. If it's a true focus group, can you ask for appointments at the focus group? So let's see some answers from you guys. Can you do it ethically? Can you do it legally? Let's see some answers. No, exactly right, Frederick. You cannot do that, because if a regulator is in there and you've advertised a focus group, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be in a heck of a lot of hot water. So focus groups are generally going to get about 12 units in there, 12 people in there, and 12 units, 12 units. So of the 12 units, then you're going to have that's one event. Then you're going to have to see how many of those you get to come to the second event for a focus group, because you can't get an appointment here. So what you're going to do is you're going to encourage them to come to a lunch and learn. The lunch and learn, guys that have been doing this have been averaging about 6 people, so about 50% that'll come to the lunch and learn. So then there's another meeting, right? And then from the lunch and learn, you're going to get about 3 to actually make appointments, okay? So that's not bad if you don't have anything else going on, because really this only costs you about $500 to do this. So it's not a bad thing, but here's the thing. You had to do 1 meeting, 2 meetings to get 3 appointments. Here you did 1 meeting to get how many appointments? So in order to get 20 appointments doing this, you'd have to do it how many times? Almost, we'll say 6 times. Give you the benefit of the doubt. It'd really be closer to 7, right? So 6 times. So that means 6 times 2 is what? You're going to have to do 12 meetings to get the same amount of meetings or the same amount of appointments as 1. So focus groups are a good thing to do when? Off season. Right now, are we off season or on season? So let's see some answers to that. Off season or on season for events? When should you be doing? We're on season, right, Frederick? So from January through May, you should be doing events. Okay? Then June to July, go ahead if you want. And I've had other guys that have had very good success with June, July doing events. But if you want to shut down events, you can do focus groups, and you can do go back to your clients and do referral dinners. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to that. And then you can also do annual reviews, etc., annual reviews. You can also do that during November and December. But during January through May and September and October, you should be doing events, because look at the kind of numbers we're talking about here, guys. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? So it's a great question, Rick, but nobody better be doing focus groups right now, because they're going to catch it from me if they are. Because you should be putting all your energy into events during those primary event months. Does that make sense to everybody? Super. Okay. So go down here. So what do we want to talk about with pointers today is the fact that 30 banks are being sued, and they're being sued for this. Processing debit fees from high to low versus chronologically. So what they're doing with their debit fees on their cards is they're taking the fees that are the highest and they're processing them first instead of doing them chronologically. Now, just to give you an idea, the average checking account has 111 pages for their disclosure. And when people have fought against the banks with credit card discrepancies, they've lost 94% of the time. The arbitration, which is how most of them in their paperwork, in that 111 pages for checking accounts, or it's pretty much the same length for credit cards if you go onto the online disclosure, 94% of the cases are won by the credit card companies. So any ideas, guys, on how we can use this information, or where you'd use this in the meetings?
And Mike?
Yes.
I've got Marion who's volunteered to have an open line here, so thank you, Marion.
Super.
Let's see if you can hear us.
Yes, I hear you fine.
Perfect.
Super.
Thanks, Marion.
Thank you for helping out, Marion. Marion, what do you think we could use this kind of data about 30 banks being sued, or the debit fees being processed from high to low instead of chronologically, or the fact that a checking account has 111 pages of disclosure in small print, and the credit card companies win 94% of the time? Where do you think we could use this in our meetings?
The disclosure meeting?
Yep, the disclosure meeting. And I would use it in a number of different places. First of all, you could use it if a lot of their money is where?
CDs?
CDs and in banks, exactly. And you can also use this just as an example when you get into the actual investments and start talking about fees and these things. Because when you start talking about fees, the client sometimes, and again, we're especially in the Midwest, and out west and out east, not so much, but in the Midwest, when clients start finding out about these hidden fees, and clients start finding out about how things have been set up incorrectly, guess who they incorrectly? Guess who they start to blame? Marion, where do you live?
Dallas.
Dallas. So you're pretty much in the Midwest. Where do you think, or they start to blame? Who do you think they start to blame?
The banker or the broker?
Well, that's where that's who I would blame, even though I'm from the Midwest. But quite often what we find is these nice people in the Midwest start to blame themselves. Oh, I should have known that. Oh, that's my fault. Oh, this is a great way for you to say, you know what, how can you possibly know that? Well, I'll give you an example. How can you possibly know that when just opening a checking account? How complicated an investment is a checking account, Marion?
It's easy.
It's about the simplest kind of investment we could do, right?
Yes.
Do you know how long the average disclosure paperwork is on a checking account?
3 pages.
Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you? Because it's so simple. It's actually 111 pages. So whose fault do you think it is if people get hit with a hidden fee or something they didn't know about, or it didn't work quite the way they thought it worked? Do you really think it's the investor's fault? When a simple checking account has 111 pages for disclosure, how many pages do you think your investment has for disclosure?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, if a checking account has 111, can you really be blamed if you don't didn't know about these things with your investment account?
No.
So why do you think a simple checking account has 111 pages of disclosure? Is it really to protect you?
No, it's to protect them.
Yeah. So can you really be blamed, Marion, if you didn't know about these things?
No.
Who's to blame?
The bank and the attorneys.
Exactly. So that's how you would use this kind of information. So having these tidbits in the back of your head allows you to use them not on every meeting, but having these things in the back of your head, you're able to use continually to get on their side. Because are we moving the process ahead, Marion, if they're blaming themselves?
Probably not.
Well, think about this. What's the whole purpose of the disclosure meeting?
To get them to move to you.
Yep, I agree with that. But how do we get them to move to us? By showing that we have better solutions, by showing their investments are bad, by having them get mad at their investments and say these are bad investments. Is that how we get them to move to us?
By showing them things that they weren't aware of.
Okay, but if we show them things that they weren't aware of, and all of a sudden they become aware of them, guess what they could do with that information?
Fix it.
Yeah, and what's the easiest way for them to fix it?
Change banks.
What's the easiest way for them to fix it? To go back to their current guy and say what? Fix this.
Right.
And do people want to do things the hardest way or the easiest way?
The easiest.
Yeah, so if we simply show them that things are wrong, they're going to say, thank you very much, you're a great guy, and they're going to do what with that information?
Get it fixed the easiest way.
Which is to go back to who?
Their guy.
Their guy. So the real purpose of the disclosure meeting is to do what?
Get them to become your client.
By?
Showing them things they didn't like.
So, but if all we do is show them things that they didn't know or didn't like, what would they do with that information?
Get it fixed the easiest way.
By going back to who?
The regular guy.
Okay, so let's try again. What is the purpose of the disclosure meeting?
To make
Do we have any answers being typed in? Get them angry. Okay, Frederick. Get them angry at their current advisor. The only reason they'll leave their current advisor is if they don't like their current advisor. If they find out they hate every single investment, 9 times out of 10, guess what they're going to do, Marion? They're going to go back to their guy and they're going to say, dang it, I hate these investments. And guess what their guy's going to say?
We can fix that.
Yep. And then how much money do you make?
0.
0. So the purpose of the disclosure meeting, Marion, is what?
To get them angry.
At their current advisor. The only way they're going to, guys, this is, when I did 101 presentations and closed 8 people, I did a fantastic job on those 101 presentations getting them sick and tired of their current investments. And I thought, hey, if they're sick and tired of their current investments and I did all the work, of course they're going to move to me. Guess what I found out? 8 people were fed up with their guy and moved their money to me. The other, whatever was that, 94 or 5 people, they just took my information, did the easiest thing, take it back to their guy, and the guy said, oh, yeah, we can fix that. And he made all the money. The purpose of the disclosure meeting is to get them angry at their current advisor, to have them realize he's not covering things. And these aren't just mistakes. If they're just mistakes, Marion, what can they do with that?
Get it fixed the easiest way.
Yep. So they can't just think it's mistakes. We have to assign a what to their current guy? A motive. If there's no motive for that guy to have made mistakes, guess what we have? Just mistakes. And with that information, they're going to go back to their current guy and get them fixed. But if there's a motive, if the reason the guy did it was because he didn't know, didn't care, and more likely that he did it on purpose so he could make more money, they're not going to take this information back to their guy. So if we have a client who's starting to blame themselves for all these mistakes, we use this kind of information to get them to say, to realize that, oh, it's not my fault. It's actually the fault of my advisor. It's the fault of the institution. So, and because we have to make sure that they don't start blaming themselves. If they blame themselves, if people start blaming themselves, what's going to happen is inaction. They won't do anything. So these kind of things can be used when they start to blame themselves. And Jeff, are you on?
Yeah, I am.
Does that happen? Do clients start to blame themselves?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they don't want to believe that anything was withheld at first. They just start saying, things like, Yeah, I should have been more on top of that. I guess maybe he might have gone over it, but I guess I should have been paying more attention. Yeah, he gave me the information, but I didn't really read it, and I guess it's my fault.
And when you've listened to tapes, Jeff, and the advisor lets that stuff slide, what happens at the end?
It gets worse. If you let it slide, then that's going to be the refrain of the entire meeting. It doesn't change as you go longer into the meeting. It just gets louder, and they get more adamant that they made the mistake. They're the ones that weren't paying attention. They're the ones that were asleep at the wheel. And if they feel like it's their fault and not anyone else's fault, they're not going to do anything.
And Jeff's right. It does get louder and worse. And, in fact, then as you start to point out more and more things that are wrong, they start to think you're attacking who, Marion?
Them.
Them. And now, how is that going to help us?
That's not good.
It's not. So the first time they blame themselves is when you have to jump in and say, oh, you would think that it might be your fault, but let's review this. And then you start walking them through why it can't possibly be their fault. Because push comes to shove, like Jeff says, they really don't want to point, most nice people don't want to point their finger at their guy. So they're going to blame themselves first. But push comes to shove, Marion, would we rather blame somebody else or ourselves?
If you're from the Midwest, you blame yourself.
Yeah. But push comes to shove, if we can get by with it, what would we rather do?
Put it on somebody else.
Yeah, so even if they're nice and are trying to blame themselves, with just a tiny little push, they'll easily jump over to the other side and start blaming that other guy. But as Jeff said, if you let it slide, it only gets worse and worse. And then, as Marion said, they're going to start getting mad at you for pointing out all the mistakes they made, even though that's not what you're trying to do. Okay, so that's how you'd use this kind of information. So the thing I want to talk about today, though, is how we use certain tools in the disclosure meeting. And I've told people over and over and over that I made a ton of money. I made almost $1 million a year by doing things that I didn't get paid for. I made almost $1 million a year by doing things that I didn't get paid for. And that's what I want to talk about for the remainder of the hour here. And what it comes down to is when mama ain't happy, Marion, what happens?
Ain't nobody happy.
Ain't nobody happy. And see, that's what the first part of the disclosure meeting is about. See, when they come in to this disclosure meeting, what are they expecting, Marion?
You to sell them something.
Yep. And so how high is their resistance level?
Very high.
Very high. So the first thing we have to do is start busting that down. Now, we did a lot of that. We busted it all the way down at the first meeting. But at the second meeting, it's come right back up again. So we have to start, so it's not back up as high as it was at the first meeting because they started to trust you, but it's still up high enough that we need to bust that down again. So what we're going to do is talk about the financial or the non-financial first, Marion?
Non-financial.
Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the survivor's guide, the will and the trust, the durable power of attorney, the medical power of attorney, the advance directive, the electronically filing the medical power of attorney and durable power of attorney, the ID theft pen, the umbrella liability insurance. So which of these do you make money on here, Marion?
None.
None. So why the heck would we go through all that stuff if we don't make any money on it?
To show them that you care.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. Because do they really think we know that much more than the current guy?
No.
Because if we did, where would we be right now?
In the White House.
We'd be in the White House, or we'd be on our yacht in the Mediterranean, or we'd be anywhere. Because if we were that much smarter than their current guy, we'd be the world would be at our oyster, right? So what they're really looking for is they don't think they're being that they're being taken care of by their guy. Just really, push comes to shove. How many people think that the guy's taking unbelievable care of them?
Not a whole
Very,
lot.
very few. Because if they were one of those people, would they have come to our meeting?
No.
No. If they thought they were being so well taken care of, those are called loyal customers. And loyal customers have no intention of moving because they think their guy is doing everything in the world. They think the guy is moving the world for them. But guess what percentage of people out there are really loyal customers in our industry? High or low?
Probably 20%.
Actually, it's much lower than that. It's like closer to 4 or 5%. Now, there are a lot of satisfied clients out there. In fact, you're right about that number, Marion. It's about 80% of the people out there are satisfied. But here's the thing about satisfied clients. When three different entities that researched this, they found out that about 80% of the people are satisfied. And when I worked at Best Buy as their training sales trainer, etc., I trained the people that you needed to make sure you had satisfied clients. And I went by that for 20 years until the most recent research, especially in the financial industry, found out that satisfied clients was worthless. Because guess what satisfied clients are going to, how long satisfied clients are going to stay with their current guy, Miriam? They're going to stay until what?
Well, somebody else satisfies them.
Yeah, until they find something better. So 80% of the people are satisfied, and they're going to stay with their guy until they find something better. Loyal clients, that 4 or 5%, they're not going to move no matter what. They're not even looking. They've got the blinders on. But that means we have a large entity, 80%, that we can go after and get that money. So we're going to talk about the non-financial first. And it's going to take 40 minutes. See these things right here? You should not be moving past umbrella liability insurance until 40 minutes have gone by at the disclosure meeting. And so, Jeff, when people first come onto our system, how long does it normally take, guys, to cover these things?
Usually about 10 or 15 minutes.
And Marion, why would you think that would be the case?
Maybe they don't have those things in place.
Well, if they don't have the things in place, it should take longer than 40 minutes. Because you're going to have to do what then?
Tell them why they should have it.
Exactly. So why do you think advisors only spend 10 minutes on this stuff? What do advisors love to talk about, Marion?
Money.
Money. What do none of these things deal with?
Money.
So guess how fast advisors want to get to the money?
Right away.
So guess how quickly they want to get through this stuff?
Quick.
Quick. So if we do that, however, and what was the reason we wanted to do this stuff? Because we wanted to lower that resistance barrier?
Right.
If instead we just rush through this stuff, guess what we just walked by? The ability to lower that resistance barrier. See, if the first thing we did when people come in and start talking about the money, what do you think happens to that resistance barrier, the level of resistance?
Stays the same or gets higher.
It stays the same, right? Exactly. Because they know the only reason we're talking about money is because we really care about them, don't we, Marion? And we'd lose sleep if their investments didn't do well, right? And we'd lose sleep and just have a heart attack if their investments weren't set up properly because we are just such godly angels. Is that what they think?
No.
They think the reason we're worried about their money is because why?
We want to make a sale.
We want to make a sale. So how hard is it going to be to get them to move to us if the only reason they think we're talking about their investments is to get a sale?
Very hard.
Very hard. And I'll have guy after guy after guy tell me that, hey, I have a 80 or 90% closing ratio. And when I go through that and I say, well, geez, you've seen, how many people have you seen in the last year? And they say 40 or 50. And I say, oh, great, so you've closed 40 clients? Well, no. And guess what they tell me when I start running the numbers with them? They start to say, well, you know, those other people weren't gettable. They weren't ready to move. They recently moved the money. There were too high a surrender charge. They come with reason after reason after reason telling themselves why they didn't get the deal. But the reason they didn't get the deal is because the only thing they did was come in and they were start talking about the money, so the resistance level never came down. And if the client thinks the only reason you're talking about the money is to move the money and make a sale, why should they move to you, Marion?
Only if they hated their other guy.
Only if they hated their other guy. Only if they hated their other guy. So what we want to do here is set it up. Because here's what I found out. If you spend 40 minutes on this, it's going to work to your favor because you're going to have the most important person of the couple. So we're going to talk about couples today. The most important person of the couple, the decision maker of the couple, get on your side. See, couples will have two types of people. One person is concerned about the money and runs the money, and the other person is concerned about what, Marion?
Family.
Family. So one person takes care of the investments, and the other person makes sure that everybody in the family is happy, that arranges all of the holiday meals, does all the things for the family. And it's generally, and I'm going to be talking generalities today, I've seen it occasionally the other way around, but most times, who worries about the money, the guy or the gal?
The guy.
Guy. And who worries about the family?
The lady.
The lady. And the lady, here's the thing. Guess who ends up, even though the guy is the head of the money, who's going to be the final say in whether that money gets moved, Marion?
The lady.
The lady. And so when we come in and we're full barrel talking about the money, guess who we haven't won over?
The lady.
And generally the lady likes the other guy. So we've got real problems here, right? She's the decision maker, and she already likes the other guys, because most of these ladies like to make lots of changes, or even guys or gals. Do they like to make lots of changes?
No.
No. So if all you do is come and talk about the money, they have no reason to change, right? Because they're not concerned about the money. So you can make all the best arguments in the world about how great it is to change the money. The guy will be convinced. They'll go home, and what would the lady say?
I think we should stay with our regular guy.
I like him. Exactly. And then you're screwed. I think we should stay with the other guy. So guess what all these things are talking about?
The family.
The family. So guess who we're going to win over in the first 40 minutes?
The lady.
Who is the decision maker? See, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So the Survivor's Guide, I want you to think about this. The Survivor's Guide, who do we sound like?
I'm a funeral director.
A funeral director. With the will and the trust, who do we sound like?
An attorney.
And with the medical power attorney, the quality of life director, and electronic filing it, who do we sound like?
A medical professional.
Medical professional. Who do we sound like when we talk about the ID theft plan?
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement or some security expert, right? Well, who do we sound like when we talk about the umbrella liability insurance?
Property casualty agent.
So far, who do we not sound like?
A salesman.
So what happens to their worry about us selling them something?
Lowers substantially.
Lowers. And we get it right down to zero and we get mama on our side. So we spend 40 minutes going through that stuff. See, they view you as a consultant by that point. A funeral director, an attorney, a doctor, security expert, insurance consultant. You know what they're not viewing you as? A salesperson. As you pointed out, Marion, just a few minutes ago, they don't care how much you know until they know what?
How much you care.
And all those things are about what? As far as the woman is concerned, again, I'm talking generalities, but I have seen it reversed occasionally, but generally, we're talking generalities here. The woman cares about the money, or she cares about what?
The family.
The family. And how much you care comes down to the family. And see, we do that by doing all the other things advisors forget to do. How many advisors do you know do all these things?
No.
None. In fact, I do know one advisor that does those things. And here's the person. The only competition we have is wealth advisors working with clients of $5 million or more. Because when you're working with clients with $5 million or more, do you have a higher profit margin, Marion? Not margin, sorry. Not profit margin, but because you're dealing with larger numbers, are you going to make more money per client?
Yes.
Yes. So you have time to do what?
More work.
More work. So you have time to help them with their trust and will. You have time to help them. But the funny thing is, I've seen clients with $5 or $10 million, and the only thing their advisor talked about is what?
Money.
The money. But the only time I've seen all the things that we do covered by advisors is when they deal with people with lots. An advisor deals with somebody with lots of money. But the funny thing is, even then, Jeff, and would you agree, even then, how often do you see clients with $5 or $10 million an advisor that the advisor's working with all those other things?
Yeah, generally he's not. I mean, he's referring them to people, but he's generally not making sure that it gets done.
No, and half the time he doesn't even care if it's being. He might work with the will, trust, and estate, but what is he not doing? Is he working with a medical power of attorney?
No, absolutely not.
ID theft? No, he's
Nope.
not doing any of those things. So the only people I've seen are people that are dealing with large clients, and even then it's not very often. But guess how often, Marion, I've seen, and we've seen, Jeff, haven't we, 50,000 guys have run our meetings 50,000 times. That was 3 years ago, so I don't know how many more we've added on top of that. How many times have we found advisors that deal with the typical client who's got somewhere between $200,000 to $1.5 to $2 million? How many times do we find advisors across the country run into other advisors who are doing these things?
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it either. So guys, what do you, if Marion, if we've never seen that across the country, how do we look as compared to all other advisors out there?
Different.
Different. Different. That's exactly right. See, they don't know if we're better yet, do they? But immediately they can tell that we're different. And Jeff, how often have we talked to advisors who've said, hey, the client told me after, and usually it's the larger clients, isn't it, Jeff, where they'll say, you know, I just want to tell you why I came on with you. And what do they say, Jeff?
Well, you took care of all those other things. I mean, you really cared enough to make sure that all these other things are taken care of. You were different.
How often do they say it's because you have a great investment?
Never. Not really. I mean, they might like the investment, but that's not the reason they really moved.
Yeah, they don't ever say that. They don't say, hey, you know, because your investment was great. Why couldn't they say that, Marion? Why couldn't they say your investment was great? Where could they get that investment?
There wouldn't be a history
Well, where could they get that investment?
anywhere.
Yes, they could get it back from their current guy. So you're not going to find somebody who moves you because you have a great investment, because if it was just a great investment, they would go back to their other guy and do it with him. It's a lot easier to do it that way. They're never going to give you that as the reason, because that's never going to be the reason. The only reason they can give you is because you did all these things my other advisor didn't do, and guess why my other advisor didn't do these things, Marion?
Because he didn't care.
Didn't care, or didn't what?
Didn't know.
No, or most likely what?
Wasn't in his best interest.
He did it on purpose. So he made all these mistakes that just happened to put the client in a worse position and him in a better position. Does that sound like a mistake, Marion?
Sounds like a big mistake.
Yeah, it sounds like a big mistake that was based on what? Greed. Yeah, motivation. Exactly right. So this, guys, our system puts you in a position where you don't have to compete with anybody if you follow that 40 minutes. If you do that 40 minutes, if you spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes on it, you sound just like everybody else out there. And I don't want to compete if I sound like everybody else out there, because I will lose, because they want to do the easiest thing, not the hardest thing. And the easiest thing is go back to their current guy. So I'm going to cover all these non-financial things. And what I want to do when I get very good at this, when I get very good at that 40 minutes, I don't want them to want these things. The Survivor's Guide, I don't want them to say, yeah, I'd like that. Because if all they say, Marion, is that I'd like that, guess how long they're going to remember that once they walk out the door?
Not very long.
Not very long. You need to get to the point where they say, I need that. You want them during that meeting to say, can I have that? Can I have that? Can I have that? And of course, are you going to give it to them, Marion?
Not until they come on board.
Exactly. Not till they come on board. But if you don't hear them saying, can I have that? When do I get that? When do I get that? Can I have that? Guess what you haven't achieved yet?
A need.
A need. Because if they just say, oh, yeah, Marion, that's a good idea. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. What do you got? Nothing. If all they say is, oh, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, does that sound like somebody who's going to forget something as soon as they walk out the door?
Yes.
Yes. If somebody says, how do I do that? How do I get that? Do I get that? And they get their hands out grasping for it, then you have a need. So that's what you want to get to eventually. And how you're going to get that is you're going to have them understand the consequences. Not that it's a good idea. If I show them that it's a good idea to have a power of attorney, they're going to say, yeah, that's a good idea, Marion. And they're going to forget that when they walk out the door. But if I give them the consequences that if you don't have this, you're going to screw your wife over big time at the worst possible moment. She's not going to be able to get the money when she needs it most. And if she doesn't get the money when she needs it most, that's going to cause her undue stress. That could cause her to have the house to go into foreclosure. That could cause this, that, and that. Now, again, when we do that, we have the client tell us, we don't tell them, but we have to walk them through where they tell us the consequences. It's not that the power of attorney is a good idea, because the power of attorney being a good idea is worth what, Marion?
Nothing.
Nothing. They have to say, if I don't have that power of attorney fixed, that could cause huge problems for me. And again, who are we talking to here? Are we talking to the husband or the wife?
The wife.
The wife. And she's thinking, yeah, most of the money is held in my husband's IRA. I could be in a bad situation. I could be in a situation where he's sick, I can't get the money, and I've got a foreclosure, I'm stressed out, blah, blah, blah. That's when it goes from a want to a what?
A need.
A need. That's what we want to get to. The consequences of not having the power of attorney done, the consequences of not having the survivor's guide done, the consequences of not having electronically filed, consequences of not having the medical power of attorney done, the advance directive. The consequences, that's what takes them from a want to a need. And that's when it gets, the wife is she even thinking about their current advisor anymore at this point, Marion?
No.
She's saying, I need this guy. And I would tell you also, the 40 minutes of doing this, that's the stuff, And I had client after client get lost because their son or daughter came in and thought it was a good idea for them to change to me or a bad idea, Marion. Without doing the, if all I did is come in and talk about them changing the money, do you think their son and daughter thought it was a good idea to move or a bad idea to move?
Bad idea.
Bad idea. But I had client after client after client. I mean, it was virtually, I had basically 100% sales when I got a client's kids involved with the whole 5Q process, with all of these non-financial things. When the son or daughter saw that I was doing all these things, you could see this huge sigh of relief because they thought, oh, finally somebody's going to take care of all these things so I don't have to take care of them, so I can trust this guy. It's those non-financial things that are going to get you the sale, guys. So the Survivor's Guide, how do we do that? So the Survivor's Guide is a pretty long document. I'm going to cover a lot of it very quickly and easily, but I can't just, if I just go, hey, look at this. This will tell your kids where your safe deposit box is. Hey, look at this. This is going to tell your kids who you should contact at death. Hey, look at this. This is gonna, if I just go through it like that, they're going to say, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then what we say about it, Marion, if it's just a good idea, they're going to, when they walk out that door, they're going to what?
Forget about it.
Forget about it. So we need to do consequences. So how I do consequences with Survivor's Guide is basically 3 different things. And again, you can listen to this on the audio, or you can listen to this on the, or read this on the scripts on the website. But the first thing I talked about is the safety deposit box. And I walked them through a situation that, hey, if you have a safety deposit box, let your kids know where it's at. Because if you don't have one, your kids might spend weeks or months looking for a safety deposit box that they think exists but does not exist. So we start off with something like that, a little story like that. And then I go to who to contact at death, and I talk about my dad where he's got all these friends that I don't know about, and how horrible it would be for both my dad and them if at his death I didn't know who to contact and they missed his funeral. And I actually go through a story about this lady who reconnected with her best friend from college, didn't let her kids know about it, or just talked about it offhand. And you know, with the kids, Marion, when the kids have their baby screaming in their arms and they're talking to their mom and their mom's talking about their best friend they reconnected with from college, with the spaghetti's boiling over and the kids screaming, what does this daughter hear?
Nothing.
Nothing. So I talk about that and then say, and then what happened is this gal had a stroke and she was in the hospital for 2 weeks. So if you're have a stroke in the hospital for 2 weeks, who do you think you would like at your bedside?
Friends.
Friends. And so then we have, oh, the lady dies. And then the friend finally contacts the daughter after a month or 2 afterwards, and they find out, and I go through, it's a heart-wrenching story. So I've changed it from, oh, that's a good idea, to a what?
A need.
A need. And then we go through one more. We talk about Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate, which is basically saying that guess what percentage of families fight over money when a parent dies versus things when the parent dies?
It's more about the thing.
And usually, is it like really expensive gold bullion things, or is it silly things you could probably sell at a garage sale for $50?
It's the sentimental.
It's the sentimental things. So we walk them through, and we take it from, this Survivor's Guide is not a good idea. It's something I absolutely need. And I guarantee you the guy is thinking this, how important do you think the guy is thinking this is?
Not very.
Not very important. But guess who thinks this is really important?
The wife.
The wife. So we walk them through the consequences of not having the Survivor's Guide. And yes, the guy's going to blow it off. So guess where I'm going to be directing most of my conversation with this? The wife. Yep. Then we talk about the last will and testament and the trust. Well, I don't spend a lot of time here. I'll just point out we saw some things after a rudimentary search that need to be updated here. But when you come on board, we'll take care of those things. And I get out of there. I don't talk about much because what I found, Marion, is with trust, they spend a lot of money on that trust, right?
Yep.
So guess how in love they are with that trust?
They think it was pretty smart.
They think it was pretty smart and they're in love with it. So how much attraction am I going to get trying to attack that?
None.
None. So what I'm going to do is basically say we saw some things in there that need to be updated. They're not big things, but they could be crucial. But after rudimentary research, we found some things that they need to be updated. But we'll talk about that when you come on board, and then I get out of there. So I just plan a little, hey, it's not as good as you think it is, but I get out of there quickly because I don't want to get into a fight about this because I'm going to lose if I get into a fight about it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. But then I get to the power of attorney, and we've gone through this a couple of times in these Monday morning meetings, but I'm just going to kind of review it again. With the power of attorney, I don't want them to just think, hey, that's a good idea. I want them to think I need. And that's whether they have one or they don't have one. So if they don't have one, I'm going to get them to think I need a power of attorney because I could really be screwed if I don't have that. If they have a power of attorney, we know that 100% of all power of attorneys have problems with them. 100% of all power of attorneys have problems with them. And that's a conversation we've had before, so we're not going to spend any time on that. But if you've got questions, we can certainly address it at the beginning of a Monday morning meeting if you want to talk about that. But all powers of attorney have problems with them. We're going to get them to think, hey, it wouldn't be a good idea to get it fixed. We're going to have them say, I need to get that fixed because the whole reason I put it there is not there anymore. And how we do that is, first of all, we have them sell some of the benefits. We give them a story of the consequences. We walk them through a story where if you didn't have this power of attorney done, it could really put you in a hill of beans of trouble. Then we go through the fact that, hey, would you rather, if I had an investment that grew to $50,000 or $100,000, which one would you rather have? They say the $100K. But then we go through a situation where, yeah, with your $100K, you can only have access to it when things are going great, but you can have access to it when things are going horribly. But at the $50,000, you have access anytime you want it. And if that's the case, Marion, which one would you want, the $50 or the $100K?
The 50,000.
The $50,000. Then I have you explain, well, why the $50,000? The $100,000 is better. And you explain, well, because what good is the $100,000 if I can't get it when I need it? So we walk them through all this because the whole point we want them to understand is that, listen, getting good returns is important, but you better have access to that money when you need it, and especially when you need it most. And guess what the purpose of the power of attorney is, and the reason they sold us? And here in the number one, guess what they told us they needed this, that the power of attorney was for, Marion?
To get
the money when they need it
Yep.
most. So we had them sell that to us. And then here we say, guess what? I'm going to get back here. We're going to have them address the fact that, hey, it's very important to get the money when we need it most. And then I'm going to go through and say, well, what kind of advisor would I be if you couldn't get your money when you needed it most, Marion?
Not very good.
Not very good. See, and that's what concerns me, because guess what? During a preliminary review, we found the fact that you may not be able to get the money when you need it most. I haven't been able to do a thorough review yet, Marion, but in a preliminary review, we found even then a couple of reasons you might not be able to get the money when you need it most. So when you come on board, we obviously will do a thorough review, fix all of the holes. But at this point, just in a preliminary review, we found a couple of scenarios where you're not going to be able to get the money when you need it most. So that's going to need to be updated. So that's how we do the power of attorney. So we've turned it from, again, even the man at this point gets a little bit concerned about it, but the woman at this point is really starting to fret. And then we go through the quality of life directive, which is about I talk about the fact that a medical power of attorney, because some people do have medical powers of attorney, don't they, Marion?
Yes.
But I talk about the fact that giving somebody a medical power of attorney is the worst possible thing that you can ever do to a person. It's what you should do to your worst enemies. And at this point, they're looking at me like, how? If I say the medical power of attorney is what you should give to your worst enemies, not what you should give to your loved ones, guess how they look at me?
With a quizzical look.
Yeah, well, what are you talking about? I thought that was a good thing to do. And then I walked through the scenario where, geez, if all I knew, are things, there are black things and white things in life, right? But most things fall where?
Gray.
In the gray. And guess what the medical power of attorney deals with? The black and white or the gray? The black and white. It says, hey, I don't want any unusual measures taken to save me. So what's the definition of unusual measures, Marion?
Subjective.
Which is black or white or gray?
Gray.
So we walk them through and show them that giving somebody the power of life and death over someone, is that a great gift or a horrible gift to give somebody?
That's horrible.
It's horrible. Now, it's necessary, right? We have to do that for the laws, but to be placing somebody in that life and death switch over us without giving a detailed account of what we mean by unnecessary measures, without giving a detailed description of everything, that's a tough thing to do, isn't it? And see, they don't realize that until you start walking through. Now we've changed it from, hey, medical power attorneys is a good thing, to medical power attorneys are a horrible thing unless it has, guess what? The quality of life directive. And Jeff, how many people have we seen in 10 years that have quality of life directives?
I haven't seen any.
I haven't seen any either. So we walked them through the quality of life directive, and what we spent some time on there was to just give an example of how important this is, and we talked about pain. And the fact that Marion, both my wife and I, do you think we say, hey, we'd like to have a lot of pain?
No.
No. In fact, both of us would say, give us as much pain relief as possible. But if that's all they said, let's say that we were in an accident and they'd say, well, in order to really make them pain-free, I have to knock you out. Well, I'm a sissy, Marion, and I'd say, go ahead and what?
Knock me out.
Knock me out. But my wife is more of a control freak, and she'd rather have some pain and remain conscious. So if all we said is we want the most pain relief possible, they would have knocked us both out, which would have been good for me, right, Marion?
Yep.
But it would have been bad for who?
Your wife.
So we need to be more what?
Specific.
Specific. And that's what the quality of life director, and we go through another couple of examples so they see, oh, without this, there could be a lot of mishaps. And without this, I'm actually punishing my kids by giving them medical power of attorney. But guess what this quality of life directive is? It's a detailed description of how I want my medical power of attorney to be exercised. Medical power of attorney without this is a horrible thing to give your kids. Medical power of attorney with this is doable. So now we've gone from medical power of attorney done, hey, done that, to, hey, medical power of attorney is horrible, to, oh, I need to get this quality of life directive to make that medical power of attorney less horrible. So we've gone from something that I want to what?
Something that you need.
And again, is the guy worried about this?
No.
But who is?
The wife.
The wife. Then we go through DocuBank and have them understand that how many of us carry our medical power of attorneys on us? And we don't even have a quality of life directive. How many of us carry a medical power of attorneys or power of attorneys on us?
No.
Wherever we go, in our wallets, Marion.
Nobody.
So we go through the point that if you don't have your medical power of attorney or quality of life directive on you, and you're in a hospital, and you're in an accident, you go to the hospital, guess what the hospital's going to have you sign?
Their form.
Their form, which means all the planning you did has gone right where?
Out the window.
Out the window. So we have them understand that without this electronically filing, you're out to lunch. Then we go through ID theft. And it's not about buying insurance. This is about doing simple things that we can help them with that they haven't thought before. And even though ID theft really isn't as prevalent as it may be, if it does happen to you, how horrible it can be. Very. And are people worried about this or not worried about this, Marion?
Oh, it's on some people's mind.
Yeah, it's on some people's mind. Guess what everybody has in their house nowadays? With money. Guess what they all have in their house?
Online banking.
Online banking, but you know what they also have? It's a piece of mechanical gear. What kind of gear is that? A shredder. A shredder. They all want shredders. Why do they want shredders?
So nobody gets their account numbers.
But you know how many people, and that's not a bad thing to do, but guess where most ID theft occurs? And you've just named it here about a second ago.
Electronically.
Electronically. And if they're not prepared for that, guess how horrible things can turn. So we have to walk them through that, hey, ID theft, planning before ID theft happens is a good idea. We don't want that. We want planning. If you don't plan before ID theft occurs, you could spend months and months of torture trying to fix it. If you do some planning before it happens, you can nip it in the bud in 2 or 3 days. So we take it from a want to I need to do that stuff that you're talking about. I need that checklist that you have. And then what we do with the umbrella liability insurance, this is a little trick that I do. I'm going to sell that umbrella liability insurance hard. I'm going to tell them that they need it. I'm going to tell them that, boy, if you don't have it, you could really eat up the crick. And I'm going to explain how people sue and how they're, and I'm going to sell it so hard that they're convinced, so hard, Marion, that they're convinced that I want to do what with them?
Sell them an umbrella policy.
Sell them an umbrella policy. And then I'm going to say, once they're sure that I'm going to sell them the umbrella policy, I will not continue until I'm sure they know I'm about to say, you need to buy this umbrella policy from me. I say, now you should go back to your current guy and buy this umbrella liability insurance. And here's the reason why. This is important because this is the last, there's at this point, what do you think's happened to their resistance level, Marion?
Way down.
Way down. This is how I'm going to kick the final brick out of that wall. I'm going to sell umbrella liability insurance so hard they're going to say, aha! I knew you were going to try to sell me something. And that's the reason I'm doing is this. If I'm walking down the street, Marion, and I see this punk and goth, and he's got piercings all over, and he's got his pants half pulled down his butt and all that, I'm thinking, get a job, right?
Yep.
And then I'm 4 or 5 steps by him, and he says, hey, mister. And I turn around, oh, God, here it comes, right? Because you dropped your wallet. And he hands me my wallet back. Now what am I thinking?
You misread him.
I misread him. And do I feel guilty about that or not?
Very guilty.
I feel guilty. And then when I misjudge him, how much more leeway will I give him?
Tons.
Tons. So if he says, "Oh, here's your wallet, mister," and I say, "Oh, wow, thanks a lot," and he goes, "And I hate to do this, but I'm down here. My mom just called. She wants me to get home. I don't have enough to get the train. Could I borrow just $2 to get on the train?" What am I going to do in a second?
Give him money.
Where before, if I was walking down the street, "Hey, mister, you got a couple bucks," what would I say? Take a hike. Yeah, get a job. Take a hike. But see, when I misjudge people, how much more leeway do I give them?
A lot more.
A lot. So if I sell this umbrella liability insurance hard, and they're convinced that I'm going to sell it to them, and all of a sudden I say, "You should go back to your current guy to get that," what happens to them?
They've misjudged you.
And they say, "Oh, geez, why don't I just mellow out? This guy's only trying to help me. Look, he spent 40 minutes covering this stuff, and then I thought he was going to sell here, and he didn't even sell here." Just mellow out and let the guy help you. I mean, they're having this conversation with them either consciously or unconsciously in their brain, which allows us to then get into what? The money. Because this is the last thing we do before we start getting into the money. And even when we get into the money, the first thing we talk about is not the money, but titling on their accounts. So even once we get to the money, we start backing in slowly. So by the time we get to the money, if they think we're consultants, if they think we're a consultant on the final directions at death, and they were a consultant on their law, and a consultant on their medical things, and a consultant on their security, and a consultant on their property casualty insurance, when we finally get to the money, we have a very, very good chance that they may view us as a what when it comes to their money?
Consultant.
Where when we first started this conversation, Marion, if all we do is jump in and start talking about their money, how do they view us?
A sales guy.
So are we more likely to get a sale if they view us as a consultant or as a sales guy?
Consultant.
Yeah. So that's the reason we spend 40 minutes on all the non-financial.
Makes sense.
So what'd you get out of this call, Marion?
I need to spend more time on when they come in, going over those things.
Even though you don't make a single penny on that, or do you?
No, you don't make any money on it.
But push comes to shove, you'd say what? Because on the surface, it doesn't look like you make a single penny on it, right? But in reality, you make what?
You make the sale.
The reason I went from making 50 grand a year to $1 million a year is this non-financial stuff, because it made me look different from everybody else out there. It gave me got the woman or the person who cares about the family on my side. And what we said earlier is when mom ain't happy, Marion,
Ain't nobody happy.
so if we get her on our side, how good a salesman is she going to be to move over to us?
She's going to recommend you.
Yes. And she's going to push Papa hard to move to us. So I got a question here. If the client asks, "Why are you doing this? How do you make money?" I would say I better go back and look at how I'm presenting it, because in 50,000 times we've listened to this, Jeff, how many times have we heard that?
I've not heard that. No, I've never
But-
heard that there.
So how'd you answer that? Why are you doing all this? How do you make any money? Let's say that out of the 50,000 times we've never heard it, all of a sudden we have one person ask that. How would you address that?
Well, I would tell people that.
Go ahead.
No, I would tell people, quite frankly, we don't make money when these things, with these things, but they do affect your overall financial well-being, and we want to make sure all these things are taken care of.
And I just walk through and say, so how good of an advisor, Jeff, would I be if when you needed money, you couldn't get at it?
Yeah, you wouldn't be a very good advisor at all.
What kind of advisor would I be when something happened to you, your kids came to me and said, "I need help with finding this, and I need help with finding that," and I couldn't give them the answers?
Yeah, that wouldn't be very good either.
How good an advisor would I be if you were sued and you lost a couple $1 million due to the lawsuit?
Yeah, that wouldn't be good either.
So when you ask me why I should do these things, did you hire me to to help you with your finances, or did you hire me to sell you a product?
No, we want you to help us with our finances.
So does that just mean that I help you with this account, or that I make sure that you're protected no matter what happens?
Well, that we're protected no matter what.
That I'm able to answer questions for your kids if something happens to you, or that I can't answer questions for your kids if something happens to you?
No, we'd like you to be able to answer questions.
So you tell me, Mr. and Mrs. Client, why do you think I do these things if I don't make any money? Because it's my what? Responsibility.
That's your responsibility. It's your job.
Yeah. So my question to you is, why wouldn't an advisor, your financial advisor, cover these things?
I can't see any reason why you wouldn't.
I could, because it takes what?
It takes time.
And time is money, right?
Right.
So he's only doing things that he makes what on?
Money on.
I do these things because why?
Well, because you want to make sure everything's taken care of.
And why would I care about that?
Well, because that's your job.
Yes. And you're hiring me to do my job or not do my job?
Well, we want you to do your job.
So in other words, guess what? Who told me why I should be doing these things? The client does. Just ask them those questions. But again, guys, don't ask questions that they're not going to ask, because you can prepare for all sorts. There are a million things that a client could ask. But if you follow the system the way we lay it out, there's not a million things that clients can ask. We got it down to about a dozen things that clients can ask if you do it right. So, Marion, did you get anything? Was it a good call?
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me be on here.
Well, I appreciate you being on and helping us out with the sounding board. That helps, I think, everybody a lot. Everybody else, this is a good call. You get what I'm talking about here. Are you going to spend 40 minutes on this non-financial stuff? I'd like to see some yeses. Good call. Okay. Excellent. Okay, good. Good. So I can't stress this enough. When Jeff and I listen to these tapes, we find so often that you spend 10 or 15 minutes on it, and when we talk to you afterwards and we ask you, how long do you think you spent on this stuff, what do they say, Jeff?
Oh, they think they spent a long time on it.
They're like, well, I mean, it was torture. I mean, we spent, I don't know how long. I probably went too long, and we listened to it was like 10 or 15 minutes. We say, no, you need to go 2 or 3 times longer than that. It's all about lowering their resistance level. It's all about getting the woman on your side, and again, in generalities, the person who cares about the family on your side. If you do that, you are 3/4 of the way to a sale. So super. Any questions before we let everybody go?
That's everything that came in.
Super duper. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next Monday.